Only a short while ago, Shen Qingqiu could have matter-of-factly believed that Luo Binghe was nursing a grudge and keeping the scars to remind himself of his hatred at any time. But now, Shen Qingqiu could no longer deceive himself about the exact meaning of these actions. He'd finished reading the hugely long original novel and raised this child to adulthood, but he'd never realized that Luo Binghe was actually a pure-hearted young man. And as the deeply emotional stallion had turned gay, the, quote, stallion part had actually been summarily dropped. This Luo Binghe, who'd been bent to heavens knew whereby his rearing, possessed a heart, both masochistic and easy to harm, more delicate than a young maiden's. Or maybe it wasn't that Shen Qingqiu had never realized it, but that he'd never thought to understand. When all was said and done, he had still regarded Luo Binghe as a character in a novel and adopted an attitude that he was something to constantly observe and occasionally mess around with. Most of the time, he'd kept himself at a respectful distance, and Luo Binghe, who'd had the strongest presence in the original work, had ended up suffering most of Shen Qingqiu's assumptions about tropes and story formulas. Faced with this true Luo Binghe, Shen Qingqiu felt it was all extraordinarily troublesome, and he truly was at a loss for what to do. He was still racking his brain for solutions, so from his angle he couldn't see the hint of a twisted smile lifting the corner of Luo Binghe's mouth. After waking, Shen Qingqiu opened his eyes to see a gauzy snow-white canopy above him. Someone pushed open the door and walked in, then lightly closed the door behind them. "Are you awake?" Shen Qingqiu rotated his neck back and forth, then looked at the asker out of the corner of his eye. Under the light of the lantern, which was warmer than the light of the moon, that young man's looks were indeed good. The corner of his mouth held a smile. His appearance was peerlessly clever and handsome. His eyes especially exuded a kind of gentle and quick-witted air. He'd seen this pair of eyes before. They were eyes that had been nurtured by the Dew Lake. When Shen Qingqiu rolled into a seated position, a bag of ice fell from his forehead. The man stooped to retrieve it and put it back on the table, then replaced it with a new bag for him. Upon seeing this, Shen Qingqiu was too embarrassed to voice out all the "who are yous" and "what do you want" he'd been holding within himself. Coughing once, he said in a reserved tone, "Many thanks for your assistance at Huanhua Palace." The young man stood by the table and smiled. Humans have a saying, "A drop of kindness should be repaid by a flood." Moreover, the kindness from an immortal Master Shen far exceeded a drop. First of all, this gentleman was indeed the Snake Man from Bailu Forest. Second of all, this gentleman knew that the person inside the shell was Shen Qingqiu. "Tianlangjun?" Shen Qingqiu asked probingly. The reason why that ancient line of heavenly demons were called heavenly was because, according to legend, their bloodline had fallen from the heavenly realm and become demons. Only a heavenly demon with a lineage purer than Luo Binghe's could suppress the blood within Shen Qingqiu's body. In that case, a problem arose. Of the heavenly demon lineage, Shen Qingqiu knew of only two who had been named in the original work, Luo Binghe and his dad. Who else could he guess? But such things only came in threes. At this juncture, Shen Qingqiu's super unique riddle-solving method, which had succeeded every time to date, finally hit a wall. The man shook his head. Immortal Master Shān, taking me for my lord is truly an excessive honor. When Shen Qingqiu heard that my lord, he finally figured out which character this person was. By the time of the original work's prologue, Tianlangjun had already been subjugated and imprisoned underneath a high mountain. However, that grand battle of many years past had little to do with the male lead's overpowered and stallion ways, and thus airplane shooting towards the sky had but roughly covered the affair. He said only that Tianlangjun was, quote, no match for the combined siege of numerous top cultivators of the human realm, and he was imprisoned beneath XX Mountain, never to be free again, his trusted right hand separated from him by injury or death, unquote. Which mountain was XX Mountain exactly? Shen Qingqiu had never properly considered this question, but once his curiosity was piqued, he finally realized which one it was. Bailu Mountain! Bailu Forest on Bailu Mountain! Shen Qingqiu looked the man up and down. So this was a, quote, trusted right hand, unquote, of Luo Binghe's father! But looking at him now, he could find no trace of that snake man's deformed figure from their first encounter. Shen Qingqiu swallowed. May I venture to ask this distinguished gentleman, what is your name? Tianlangjun's subordinate, Zhu Zilang, the man said courteously. His words had only just left his mouth when the system gave a notification. Increased degree of storyline completion and filled in hidden character list plus B points 300. Activated plot hole filling event, B points plus 100. A burst of uncontainable excitement suddenly welled up inside Shen Qingqiu. Quote, plot hole filling, unquote, definitely referred to those atrocities whose perpetrator had never been identified, leaving the readers defrauded and without leads, as well as the buggy setting details in the original work. This was precisely one of the greatest reasons that Shen Yuan had disdained proud immortal Demon Wei. It was also a major reason why he'd been beating his chest, stomping his feet, and gnashing his teeth after finishing the novel. Now he'd drawn out a character who had never directly appeared on stage, and the system had opened a plot hole-filling opportunity. Could it be that next he'd finally uncover the truth behind those giant plot holes ripping through the sky? I saved you once, then you saved me once. We're even now, said Shen Qingqiu. The quote, saved you once he spoke of referred to the time he'd stopped Gong Yixiao from killing the snake man, but Zhu Zilang shook his head. There's more to it than that. If not for Immortal Master Shen, I'm afraid that even after many more years, I still wouldn't have been able to approach the Sun Moon Chūn Mushroom Flower Seed. How could you say we're already even? This sounded perfect to Shen Qingqiu. All right then, let's discuss. Can't you just extract both influences from my blood? Must you let them remain? It was as if there had been a parasite within his body, and the doctor's approach to treatment had been to place another parasite inside him to fight it. From every angle imaginable, his situation had only worsened. It's this humble one's first time utilizing heavenly demon blood, said Zhu Zilang. I've never ever heard of a means by which to dispel it. Though this was disappointing, Shen Qingqiu still expressed his understanding. The blood had entered his body and dissolved without a trace, so separating it out again truly wasn't especially feasible. Though it cannot be dispelled as long as this one's blood is also in Immortal Master Shen's body, the other heavenly demon blood will be ineffective. Zhu Zilang said, After we go to the demon realm, the tracking function will fail, and he will be unable to torment you any longer. Wait. Hold on. When did I say that I wanted to go to the demon realm? Asked Shen Qingqiu. We're going very soon, said Zhu Zilang. Shen Qingqiu examined his expression. The repayment you spoke of, it wouldn't happen to be taking me there? Why go to the demon realm at all? It was short on supplies and natural resources. The culture and customs were incompatible with his, and the environment wouldn't suit him either. In addition, more urgent worries were still piled up in his forebrain. For one, there was his brain's new trauma-driven meltdown courtesy of Luo Binghe's near-necrophiliac behavior. And for another, he'd let Liu Qingge run off with his original body. What if Luo Binghe exterminated Changqiu Mountain in a fit of anger? Shen Qingqiu had to get there before him and notify his comrades. He swiftly tossed his covers aside, planning to run away. But, unexpectedly, just as he began to move, he felt something slimy, soft, and icy cold slither up his leg. A jade-green snake lazily poked its head out from beneath covers and flicked a scarlet tongue towards Shen Qingqiu with a hiss. The snake was 3 fingers thick, and at first glance it resembled the venomous bamboo viper of the human realm. Its eye sockets were horribly large, while its pupils were disturbingly small, a ghastly contrast. But Shen Qingqiu wasn't afraid of this sort of soft-bodied animal. Regarding it coolly, he stealthily gathered energy in the palm of his hand, intending to catch it off guard and blow off 7 inches of its body. Suddenly, the jade-green snake reared back, its red mouth gaping open. It was merely a snake, but from its mouth came a shriek as ear-piercing as a human's. At the same time, a dense layer of countless green spikes exploded around its head like a blossoming flower. The sharp tips were suffused with scarlet, obviously poisonous even at a glance, and the snake's body also inflated several sizes larger, as if it had been pumped full of air. Just a moment ago, it could have been considered a cute, dainty, ornamental snake. But now it was a real fucking monster! The breeds of the demon realm were verily savage. Shen Qingqiu promptly dispelled any thought of touching it with his hands. Zhu Zilang poured out a cup of tea. Immortal Master Shen, why would you try to leave before I finished my explanation? He asked cordially as he placed the cup on the table. This one sincerely wishes to repay you for not killing him in the Bailu forest. You even went so far as to assist him. Shen Qingqiu chewed on his lip for a bit. You want me to go to the demon realm, and when I don't want to, you put this thing in my bed. Is this your idea of repayment? Zhu Zilang smiled. Not only your bed. Another small snake, the width of a thumb, slid out from Shen Qingqiu's clothes. This snake had been coiled in his robes all along, warmed by his body temperature. It had been nesting comfortably, not moving an inch, so Shen Qingqiu hadn't even noticed its presence. With an endless hiss, a flood of countless green snakes of various widths and sizes slithered out from under the bed, carpeting the whole floor. Shen Qingqiu was silent for a long while, until he said, The snake race. My father was from the southern border, Zhu Zilang said calmly. No wonder his name was thus. the demon race placed a great deal of importance on social class and lineage. Common demons or demons of lowly lineages could not append, quote, 君 to their name. This title was a suffix representing one's social status, similar to how the emperor's name was taboo and couldn't be infringed upon. The reason Luo Binghe's path to ascension was slightly rocky in the original work was because the demon lords took issue with him being of mixed human blood. In the early stages of the Demon Realm arc, Luo Binghe had done in quite a few characters named in the fashion of, quote, XX Lang, unquote. Therefore, Shen Qingqiu had concluded that while names with this suffix weren't necessarily all from the slums, their origin couldn't be especially esteemed either. Zhu Zilang undoubtedly belonged to the heavenly demon bloodline, but he couldn't take the title of Jun. The issue was evidently due to his mixed heritage. The snake race resided on the southern border of the demon realm. Strictly speaking, they still counted as part of the demon race, but their true forms took on the appearance of giant snakes. They were born in this form, and as they grew in age and cultivation, a terribly small number would over time shed their scales and take on a human appearance. But even more numbers stayed in the shape of a snake for their entire lives. "Who is your mother?" asked Shen Qingqiu. "Tianlang Jun's younger sister," said Zhu Zilang. Tianlang Jun's younger sister counted as something like the demon race's princess. How foolhardy was she that out of all her options, she had to have a child with a snake? Way too fucking hardcore. As Shen Qingqiu endured those two snakes creeping around his leg and stomach, he asked, "So, you're technically Luo Binghe's senior cousin? I say, can't you tell these fellows to not, slither into my clothes?" "If by senior one only means older, that can certainly be said to be true," Zhu Zilang said. "And they seem awfully fond of immortal Master Shen, so there's nothing this one can do." "Who the hell would believe there's nothing you can do?" Shen Qingqiu bore with it to ask, "Why were you at Huanghua Palace?" "Originally, I went to take care of official business, and I never thought I'd see immortal Master Shen," Zhu Zilang said with great patience. Shen Qingqiu's heart thumped. "Official business? This official business you speak of, does it have to do with Luo Binghe?" "To offer an alliance and rule jointly as overlords, or had there been a falling out within the demon race? Or maybe it had been for a, quote, heartbreaking demon family's reunion after many years' separation, overcome by tears of emotion?" Unquote. This time, Zhu Zilang smiled and didn't answer. I fear this official business wasn't as heartwarming as reconnecting relatives," said Shen Qingqiu. "This one was only obeying his lord's orders," Zhu Zilang said and hurried. "This body of yours, was it sculpted from the Sun Moon Dew mushroom flower seed?" asked Shen Qingqiu. If Zhu Zilang had used that one sprout for himself, it would make things easier. If he hadn't used it for himself, then it was possible that he used it to sculpt a body for Tianlang Jun. Tianlang Jun had been imprisoned under a mountain, hanging on by a single breath for many, many years, and his original body was likely long ruined. But if, like a cicada, he shed his carapace, Shen Qingqiu really couldn't guess what sort of waves would result. He had an uneasy premonition that his own careless flutter of butterfly wings had released something monumental. Having received no reply, his mind couldn't settle down, and he continued. Is taking me to the demon realm another one of your lord's orders? Whenever a question touched upon the subject of Tianlangjun, Zhu Zilang clammed up and refused to answer, offering nothing but a polite smile. It was truly infuriating. Only when Shen Qingqiu finally withdrew in defeat did he open his mouth, retaining his usual refined and courteous manner. Rest well, immortal Master Shen. If there's anything you need, please say so, and I will certainly handle it for you. We will depart for the borderlands tomorrow at the latest. Exhausted from all the talking, Shen Qingqiu asked, Do you have money? Yes, Zhu Zilang responded. Can I use it? As you wish. I want women. Zhu Zilang stopped, staring blankly. Wasn't it you who said that if there was anything I needed, I should tell you, and to feel free to do as I wish? Well, I want women, Shen Qingqiu repeated. Get rid of the snakes. A small crack finally opened in Zhu Zilang's smiling expression. After a long while, he did as instructed. Shen Qingqiu hummed a laugh and turned to get off the bed. He threw on his outer robes and tidied his clothing. For some time, Zhu Zilang seemed to be hesitating, wavering over whether to follow. But when Shen Qingqiu stepped out the door, he tagged along after. As Peak Lord of Qingjing Peak, Shen Qingqiu had been obligated to be mindful of his image. Though 1,000 curiosities had gripped his heart, he'd cleaved to the tenet that brothels were not to be entered. But now he had the opportunity. Shen Qingqiu acted as though his Zhu Zilang-shaped shadow didn't exist, and after strolling through the streets once, he picked the warm red pavilion for its more hospitable appearance. He strode in, expression utterly at ease. Before long, Shen Qingqiu was surrounded by brightly colored decorations, his nostrils assailed by the scent of talcum powder. Zhu Zilang took a seat beside him at a round table, as motionless as Mount Tai. What's with the look on your face? Asked Shen Qingqiu. Zhu Zilang averted his eyes. It's just, I'm a bit surprised that Immortal Master Shen would actually be interested in this kind of prostitution. Wait a moment. You'll see what I'm interested in, said Shen Qingqiu. Just as he spoke, a new songstress leisurely walked up from the side. She was somewhat older, and the cosmetics she wore were also quite colourful. She sat on a flower stool while cradling a pipa before meeting eyes with Shen Qingqiu and startling briefly. Not comprehending, Shen Qingqiu nodded at her. Miss? The songstress snapped out of it. My apologies, sir, she said with an easy smile. Your appearance is excellent and reminded the servant of an old acquaintance. My eyes deceived me. When she had said her piece, she lowered her head and didn't mention any further. Then, with a few plucks and strums, she began to sing. At first, Shen Qingqiu just whispered into the ears of the girls next to him, not bothering to listen to the music. But after catching a couple of phrases, he suddenly felt that he'd heard two incredibly unbelievable things. He asked for the songstress to stop. Miss, what is this you're singing? This servant is singing the popular new ballad, The Regret of Chunshan, the woman said with a delicate voice. That's odd, Shen Jingqiu said, his face full of black lines. Just now I seem to have heard you sing 2 names. Could you repeat those? The pipa player smiled behind her sleeve. What's odd about it? Could it be that you've never heard it before, sir? The leading characters in Regret of Chunshan has always been Shen Jingqiu and Luo Binghe. ... When did we get fucking turned into a popular ballad? Zhu Zilang had originally been refusing all services, quietly sitting to the side and pretending to be the air itself, but he unfortunately exposed himself when his shoulders faintly shook. Can I ask, this regret of whatever mountain, what story does it tell? Asked Shen Jingqiu. Several women next to him spoke with chirping voices. Sir, you don't even know that. Regret of Chunshan tells of the poignant sentiments between Shen Jingqiu and his beloved disciple Luo Binghe, the unspeakable and taboo. Shen Jingqiu forced himself to listen from start to end in a petrified state. Well, to summarize the plot, in short, this was a, quote, shameless master and disciple pair who spent all day on some nameless mountain ignoring their duties to knock boots, who went down to the mountain to fight monsters and take trips to Pound Town, who used 2-person push-ups to settle misunderstandings, who still needed to play a round of hide the sausage before dying, who continued to ride the Bony Express after death, and after resurrection would still gleefully smack each other's salmons, as before. Unquote. Sort of story. The pipa player sighed faintly, plucking a string with her fingertip. Have you never understood the affection in the other's heart in life? And lying with the body in death, this manner of abiding love is truly matchless in this age. All the women followed up with the incessant sighs and sobs, some already beginning to shed tears of emotion. Shen Jingqiu buried his head deep into his hands